of my discussion, which is pathophysiology of the disease. No other disease needed understanding pathophysiology so much so like this SARS-CoV-2 did. Because if you don't understand the basic pathophysiology of the disease and the virus, you will not be able to understand actually changes, what going to happen and what exactly happening in the patients and what is going on in research. First, we see the virus. As you can see, coronavirus is a large RNA positive sense RNA virus. It is surrounded by lipid bilayer envelope. And you can see that there are proteins embedded into this lipid bilayer membrane. And one of the most important protein is glycoprotein S. This is giving rise to spike-like. And as the virus is surrounded by this protein spike, it looks like a crown of a thing, and the name corona came from this protein. There is another important protein, as you see in the black. This is called membrane protein, and also another protein reddish, which is called envelope protein. These proteins are very important. This is together with the nucleocapsid protein. Basically, this nucleocapsid protein keeps the virus RNA in steady state. So all these structures needed to be understood a little bit for the virus to understand. Now, how the virus infects the human. As we know, the virus enters into the body by inhalation. Once it enters into the body by inhalation, the main organ it reaches is alveoli. In the alveoli, there are two types of epithelial cells. These are known as type 1 and type 2 epithelial cells. Type 1 epithelial cells are involved with gas exchange, and type 2 epithelial cells are involved with very important function, that is secretion of surfactant, which actually maintains the alveolar elasticity and prevents it from getting collapsed. As the virus enters into the alveoli, it gets attached with the receptor at the membrane of the type 2 pneumocyte by its spike protein. Now, this attachment of virus with the pneumocyte with this enzyme is known as angiotensin converting enzyme 2. This binding is not enough to cause the virus to enter into the cells. So there is another protein which comes from the side. This is known as transmembrane protein, TMPRSS2. This causes a cleavage with the virus and allows the virus bilayer layer membrane to fuse with the host cell membrane, and then it pulls the virus inside the cell by a process which is known as endocytosis. Once inside that cell, the virus releases its RNA into the cytoplasm. This is known as uncoated. So this is the viral RNA in the cell cytoplasm. As you can see, this is a positive sense coronavirus. So within the cell cytoplasm, immediately ribosome starts translating the virus. And by this process of translation, it produces protein, two types of protein. This is replicase protein and transcriptor protein. One of the important protein is RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So after generating this protein acts on the same RNA like this. And then it replicates its own RNA and makes a template, which is coronavirus RNA negative sense RNA. And then this replication causes production of multiple copies of Again, this enzyme passes through this negative sense RNA and causes production of multiple copies of RNA, which are exactly same as the original RNA, which was entered from the virus. Now, what happens is this RNA, which is replicated production of RNA, it exactly causes when this RNA, which is being replicated and produce copies of virus, this is not enough. As you have seen, the virus needs also protein to be synthesized, and that actually how this protein is synthesized. As you can see, the same virus, it reproduces itself by copying this negative sense RNA into positive sense RNA. At the same time, by virtue of this transcriptase enzyme, it synthesizes some of the proteins within the cell cytoplasm. So you have the virus got its own RNA and its protein. With these two raw materials, it transfers it into the rough endoplasmic reticulum of the cell. Within the rough endoplasmic reticulum, this viral RNA, newly synthesized RNA, and protein gets assembled. And from there, it is transferred into Golgi complex within the cell. And within this Golgi complex, they are further assembled and viral particles, viral proteins are produced, and they are released into the cytoplasm as vesicles. And from these vesicles, they are extruded from the cell by a process which is known as exocytosis. Why you need to understand this process? Because if you don't understand this process, you will not be able to understand where the drug acts. For example, remdesivir. Remdesivir, where it acts? It acts actually when the virus produces its copy from positive sense RNA to a negative sense RNA viral copy template. This remdesivir medicine gets incorporated into this negative sense RNA, and it does not allow the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase to properly translate the virus and thereby inhibits the production of viral RNA copies. Similarly, hydroxychloroquine, it acts at the entry of the cell, and it not only there, it also acts into the cytoplasmic area where it can change the viral environment to stop replications. So this, when there will be new drugs available in the market, if you remember this viral cycle, how it reproduces, then you will be able to clearly understand in which part exactly the medicine works. Now, as you can see, one virus entering into the cell and it is producing multiple copies. And this way, within 5 to 8 hours after entry into the cell, millions of viral copies are produced and they start spreading in the vicinity within the surrounding cell. And that's how it starts causing infection. Now, body cannot sit idle and just watch, see what happens. Body has got its own defense system. I will show you how body initially responds when the virus invades into the body. First defense system of human body which comes to play is innate immune response. And you will heard a lot of talks about innate immune and adaptive immune system, especially how it is working in this COVID-19 cases. Because you know, this disease doesn't have yet any specific drug. So we are solely dependent on our immune system for our survival. Now I show you, this is an alveoli, and as you can see, I draw it in a way so that you can understand. These are the type 1 pneumocytes and this is type 2 pneumocyte. So as I showed you in the circle, that the virus enters and affects the type 2 pneumocytes. This is the alveolar capillary. So once virus invades type 2 pneumocytes, it immediately understands that it has been invaded by a foreign virus. So it causes release of a cytokine, which is known as interferon alpha. This interferon alpha is very important. It causes immediately three things. First, it goes into the surrounding pneumocytes and informs the pneumocytes that it has been invaded by a foreign virus. And whenever the surrounding cells gets information by interferon alpha, they have got by default, they have got genetic mechanism by which they produce antiviral proteins. And these antiviral proteins stops invading the cells in a way that they stop synthesis and replication of the virus. Second thing interferon does, there are alveolar macrophages. This virus causes stimulation of the alveolar macrophages. Alveolar macrophages, once they are stimulated, they are together with it causes another thing, which is it stimulates natural killer cells. So these are the three immediate defense systems comes into play. One is protection of the surrounding cells from the viral invasion, activation of the alveolar macrophage, and activation of the natural killer cell. What they do? The alveolar macrophage, as soon as it is activated, it causes release of cytokines, interleukin 1, H6, interferon gamma, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Not only that, it also causes release of one important thing, that is chemokines, CXCL10, CCL2. These chemokines are important for inviting neutrophils within the alveoli. So, natural killer cell, macrophage, and neutrophils, they come into play immediately, and they take control of the situation and tries to contain the infection before it gets spread. This is not only the defense system, there is another defense system becomes activated, and that is adaptive immune system. This system is highly specific and very powerful. In the alveoli, we all know that there are dendritic cells. Dendritic cells together with alveolar macrophages swallow the virus, process the viral protein and project it in the surface, and takes this viral protein to the regional lymph node where there are CD4 T helper cells. Once these viral proteins are presented to T helper cell CD4, immediately they cause release of two important cytokines. One of the important cytokine is T helper 1 cytokine. This cytokine acts on naive CD8 T lymphocytes, and this, by the stimulation of T helper 1 cytokines, this naive T lymphocytes starts immediately proliferation and maturation. Once they are proliferated and matured in several thousands, they become cytotoxic T lymphocytes. These cytotoxic T lymphocytes are highly specific against this SARS-CoV-2. What they do, these cytotoxic T lymphocytes immediately goes at the site of infection, and they causes destruction of the infected cells. Not only this, these cytotoxic T lymphocytes remains in the system as memory cell. As I said, there is another set of T helper 1 cytokine, and that is T helper 2 cytokine is released. And these T helper 2 cytokines, once released, they act on B lymphocytes. Under the stimulation of T helper 2 cytokines, B lymphocyte starts proliferation in thousands, and they become plasma cells. These plasma cells are highly specific against this virus, and they cause immediate release of antibody. Actually, this antibody we are trying to test to identify specific virus. Initially, they release IgM antibody, and then later on they release IgG antibody. This antibody goes into the site of infection and helps the system to eliminate the virus by its destruction. And the B lymphocyte, highly specific B cell lymphocytes, they remain in the system as memory cell. And these T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte memory cells on which we are depending on those who got COVID already infected, and those are infected, it is thought that they may have this memory cell. Now the question remains that's whether this immunity is long lasting or not. Now what happens? About 80% of COVID-19 patients, this innate and adaptive immune system works perfectly and patients recover either with mild or moderate disease. As you can see, the disease has been taken control by body's own system. But unfortunately, 20% of cases, its immune system fails to work properly. And that's why we see severe disease and critical complications. Now, if I make a spectrum of the disease of COVID-19, you will see that day one, as the virus enters into the body, innate immune system starts working against the virus. And by the time day 5, we see the activity of adaptive immune system taking over. This innate and adaptive immune system working together is sufficient to take control of the virus. And by the time 10th day onwards, 80% of infected persons gets recovery. Only 20% enters into severe and critical disease. And by the day of 18 to 22, either maximum either recovers or patient succumbs to death. Now, who gets severe disease? This is one important question to be answered. Normally, as you have seen, the innate immune systems works by macrophage, neutrophils, and natural killer cells. These three cells causes efficiently destruction and elimination of the virus. Then also comes the adaptive immune system. There are two arms of adaptive immune system. One is by cytotoxic lymphocytes, another is plasma cell producing antibody. And both these systems, when work together, innate and adaptive immune system, they perfectly in synchrony work. And they, after completion of their job, they provide a negative feedback for optimum immune response. This is very important for the body. Body cells has to understand when it has to be stopped. And everywhere in physiology, you will see that there is a negative feedback system prevailing, causing normal harmony of the body function. Natural killer cells, cytotoxic T lymphocytes, what they do, actually they clear the area of battlefield. They clear the affected cells, damaged cells, and also stress cells together with macrophages. Both these natural killer cell and cytotoxic T lymphocytes also send signal to the macrophage to stop because the disease has been taken control of, the virus has been eliminated. So under the influence of these, now macrophage gets signal. In these groups of patients, those get severe disease, the antibody response is inadequate. The natural killer cells and cytotoxic T lymphocytes fail to clear the damaged cells, and at the same time, they fail to inhibit the macrophage activity. So disease which started as a viral disease turns out to be immunologically mediated disease. And now I show you what happens exactly when the disease gets severe. Now, this macrophage doesn't get any inhibitory signal from this natural killer cell and from other cells. So what happens? They continue to produce cytokines, interleukin 1, 8, 6, interferon gamma, interferon alpha. So once these cytokines started release uncontrolled, they cause, this is alveolar capillary. They cause dilatation of the alveolar capillary. Not only that, they cause increased permeability of these capillaries. So fluid from the capillary starts oozing out into this space, which is known as interstitial space. As the process continues, these fluids tends to come more and more, and the patient starts getting breathless. This fluid not only accumulates into the interstitium, it also presses the alveoli from outside. And at one point, it starts pouring into the alveoli, giving rise to alveolar edema. At this stage, if you do chest X-ray or CT scan, you will see the ground glass opacity. And this represents mostly that there is interstitial and alveolar edema. Now the patient started getting breathless, and as the process continues, he gets more breathless because of alveolar edema. That causes another problem. As we know that oxygen diffuses from the alveolar into the capillary of the pulmonary capillary. So diffusion of oxygen becomes hampered and difficult because of this alveolar edema and interstitial edema. So partial pressure of oxygen starts going down. As it continues, then the patient develops hypoxemia. This hypoxemia causes further breathlessness. And not only that, there is carbon dioxide which should go out from the capillary into the alveolum for to be expelled. The carbon dioxide could not go efficiently out of the circulation, so they start accumulation, and there occurs increased retention of carbon dioxide. This, together with what happens is that, as I said, that chemokines released by macrophages, these chemokines comes into the alveolar capillary epithelium, and they cause their capillary endothelium to capillary endothelial cells to liberate two important things, and this is called vascular cell adhesion molecule. This vascular cell adhesion molecule is actually, this neutrophil, as you can see, do not know, actually they have no clue where they need to go. Millions of neutrophils are circulating into the blood. So when these chemokines produces, say, this vascular cell adhesion molecule, they trap the neutrophils. Actually, they give the neutrophils clue where to go and to act. So millions of neutrophils start pouring into the alveoli. This neutrophil not only phagocytoses the virus, it causes release of proteases and other enzymes, which not only causes destruction of the virus, it also causes destruction of the epithelial cells. Now, this accumulation of neutrophil, this alveolar edema, together with macrophage, natural killer cells, and debris, give rise to a picture of consolidation. So, features of consolidation you start seeing after, as you see the ground glass opacity. Patient starts getting more and more breathless because of this. And also there is reduction in surfactant production because pneumocytes are inactivated by the virus. As surfactant production goes down, there is tendency of alveolar collapse, and together everything, when it gets full-blown picture, the patient gets the picture of ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. Now, I must emphasize on the fact that very small minority of patients gets up to this stage of ARDS. Very minor number of patients. Let's see, this is what happens into the lungs and alveoli. Now, other things that happens is interleukin-1, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha released and comes into the circulation. In the hypothalamus, they goes and they cause production of prostaglandin E2. And this prostaglandin E2 resets the thermostat of hypothalamus, and that gives rise to very high fever. And a significant number of patients gets very high continued type